Psalm 139. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created me, my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they will outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. If only you, God, will slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Good morning. Come on. Good morning. There we go. If we haven't met, my name's Mike. As I've been introduced a few times, it's a pleasure to meet you. If we haven't met, I'll be on the Get Connected stand outside, and I'd love to meet you afterwards. This morning, as you've just heard, I'm speaking on Psalm 139. And I'm sure it's a psalm, arguably probably one of the most famous psalms, maybe one of the most well-known, and I'm sure a lot of you know it well. But my main point is that you are known and loved by the great artist. Only in his presence are you found and you know your worth. During this series, if you feel more like a pilgrim or a prodigal, I want you to know that you've been created and you are seen by the Lord. There's no place you can go, no place too far from his eyes, his presence, his care, but that leads us into worship. And so I wanted to start with a bit of a game, a very biblical game. It's called Jesus Verses. I'm going to ask Josh to come up. Josh hasn't seen these questions, but he knows I'm going to ask him some questions. I'm going to be Jesus, and Josh is going to be Josh.
Great.
And basically, I'm going to ask Josh some questions and see how his responses go. So let's start with one of your kids.
Okay.
You don't need to name them.
Fine.
When was their birthday?
3rd of March.
Cool.
What year?
Yeah.
2015.
Okay. Jesus knows. 1-1. What's their favourite colour?
Maybe red, but actually, I'm not sure.
Well, Jesus knows.
Okay, sure.
Right?
Can see where this is
Let's
going.
get a little bit harder. What's their shoe size?
It's weird for kids, isn't it? 3? But like the kid 3? It's weird, isn't it? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, Jesus knows. I think I'm winning here. Okay, let's get a bit harder with them. How many breaths did they take yesterday?
Yep, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. No idea.
Jesus knows. Okay, so that's your children. What about you, right? You should know fairly much everything. When were you born?
9th of the 1st, 91.
Whoa, you're old. Okay.
Just compared to you.
Yeah, Jesus knows too. Okay, last couple. How many hairs are on your head?
Yep.
Yeah.
No idea.
Jesus knows. Okay, last one. You know this because this is you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that thing you did when you were in your mother's womb, when your heart wasn't beating, and you did that almost miracle where your heart started beating?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I don't know, my mum's here though.
Jesus knows. Thank you, Josh.
Okay, great.
I think I've made my point, right? You can give him a clap, that's fine. My point is that God has complete knowledge of us. It says in verse 1, it says, "You have searched me and know me." And I'm no scholar. I'm studying theology, as a lot of you know, as an ordinand. And one of my pet hates, and I'm going to be really open here, is when someone stands at the front and goes, in the Hebrew or in the Greek it says this. It's really frustrating. But that's what I'm going to do for a second. Hear me out. In verse 1 it says, "You have searched me." And those words can be translated to be pierced through, to see right through. And you often hear people say, "Well, I can see right through you." It's almost like, as a parent, when you catch your child like painting on the wall or drawing on the wall, and they stand there and look at you with the pen or the paper or the paintbrush, and they go, "No, it wasn't me." And you go, "I can see right through you." It's actually not like that at all, because it's so different being known by God than being known by a human. So what does it mean to be known by God? It's that he knows us completely. He knows us complete to be known by him. It says in verse 5, it says, "You hem me in behind and before." And I guess with this, you could either feel heartened or you could feel threatened, because that's quite personal. David writes in this psalm, almost in pairs of word, a bit like an A to Z almost. And I guess this is to suggest how comprehensive God's knowledge and love is, to make that kind of parallel. He says, "Whether I sit or rise, whether I travel or settle down, that is, whatever I do, he knows me. He knows my thoughts from afar, my words before I utter them. He knows me and us completely." That's exposing, right? That can sit quite uncomfortably. There's nowhere to hide, but that's the point. There is nowhere to hide, because we can't hide anything. He knows it before we could ever know. Jesus seeks to know us. I honestly don't think that Jesus seeks to know us inside and out just because he had to, because it was a chore to him. I don't think that was the case. I honestly believe that because he loves us more than human minds could ever think of, that's why he wants to be so close to us. So I would sway you to feel heartened, not threatened. In this psalm, you can either sit both ways. I really would sit on the heartened side. God has complete presence of us, in us, on us. But what does that look like to have the Lord's presence in us? How does that sit with you? How does that make you feel? Is that comfortable? When you think of having the Lord's presence in you, maybe pierced through you, like it was translated in verse 1, how does that sit? Maybe when you think back to the last week, maybe something you shouldn't have done, maybe something you shouldn't have said, maybe the way you treated a colleague or a family member or something happened. How does that sit with you when the psalm talks about the Lord being pierced through you, or God having a complete presence in you? David follows on in verse 7. It says, "Where can I flee from your presence?" And maybe that's your initial thought when you reflect within, but the truthful answer is nowhere. David's talking in this psalm about a God who pursues you to the ends of the earth, but when you arrive there, he's already there. When you are on a journey, when you think to go somewhere or do something or say something, he already knows that you were going to say it. And even in the deepest darkness, God's presence remains. We can't escape him, but we can choose to embrace his light. God doesn't just see our actions, but he sees our motivations. And this can be a comfort when we feel in those hard times, but it can, of course, be a challenge that he knows our motivations. Doesn't this remind you of someone? When reading this passage and thinking about the verses, it reminded me of Jonah. And when Jonah was told to go to Nineveh, but he turned in the opposite direction and runs towards Tarshish in exactly the opposite direction, right? And what does God do? He runs. God's already there. God's already there to stop him in the way of a fish or a whale or whatever it was, and stops him in his tracks to turn him around, to allow him to think, to give him time to get his priorities straight. Why did he do that? Because we are God's complete work. He is the great artist. And whether you feel like a pilgrim or a prodigal at the moment, a pilgrim is defined by someone who journeys to a sacred place for a religious reason. Maybe that's you, maybe that you've dedicated your life to God. Maybe you wake up every morning, you read your Bible, you pray for people when you see them in the street or when you think of them. Or maybe you feel a bit more like a prodigal, someone who spends lavishly or foolishly or often squanders their resources. Maybe you are not living your life in that way at the moment. That's fine. We all have periods in our life where we're going to feel more like a pilgrim or a prodigal. But it's helpful and it's really healthy to know where we are in our lives at that time. But it doesn't matter, because we are his masterpiece. And as long as we know that the Lord is with us, he's there. He's just like an artist that will go back and slowly add to their artwork. Jesus does that to us. Just like an artist doesn't quickly do a piece of art, get their paints out, their pencils or whatever it is, do their picture and then give it away or sell it instantly. Often an artist will sit there, will do their painting or their picture, and they'll go back and back and back for the finer details. That is what it's like having the Lord on us. It will take time. It does take the Lord time. He doesn't do it instantly. As we carry on in verse 13, there's quite a powerful verse that says we have been knit together by God, who basically on a tiny scale engaged when making us on a task perhaps more like his original work of creation. He knitted us together. The odds of us being alive right now are 1 to 400 trillion. 1 to 400 trillion. Imagine having those odds. It's almost impossible, right? We're not mass produced. We are each uniquely crafted. Our lives are not random. God has a plan and a purpose for all of us. When creating us, he didn't just get a load of darts and just drop it on the dartboard, basically. He sat there and meticulously thought about each and every one of us, our journeys, our plans, our paths, who we were going to have relationships with, who our mothers and our fathers, where we were going to work. But despite our flaws, God sees our potential. He created us fearfully and wonderfully made. We're reflecting his own image. We are his masterpiece. He is the great artist. In a couple of minutes, as the band come up, we're gonna sing a song called "Precious Is Your Presence." It's maybe a song that you may not have heard before. It is a song that was written by Rory and the team for the Worship Live album. I want to read you the chorus. It's going to come on the screen as well. It says, "In your presence I am found. You're the artist and I'm your work of art. In your heart, Lord, I'm secure. You're the comforter my soul is longing for. How precious is your presence." How powerful are those lyrics? You're the comforter my soul is longing for. Whether we feel like a pilgrim or a prodigal, wherever we're sitting in life at the moment, whether you're feeling loved or disheartened, whether you're feeling known, seen and heard, The Lord is our comforter. And I'm sure as I said at the beginning, many of you know Psalm 139, many of you know it well. But my prayer is that this message will remind you of how loved you are, that the Lord is the comforter to your soul, that you are the Lord's work of art, that you are a priceless piece, that he loves you no matter whether you feel like a pilgrim or a prodigal. And remember that he's not finished with you yet. He's going to come back. He is there. He's making changes. And history is full of examples of those who tried to avoid a challenge, those who attempted to made bad mistakes. And I can't help but we can't ignore these last couple of verses that are so important. Only those with open hearts to God's scrutiny, that have doubts about their own judgment, and who are fully aware and are able to make an offense within themselves, will be able to follow the path of the Lord forever. We need to be able to scrutinize ourselves. And that's my prayer for today. That's my prayer, because as verse 34 says, lead me in the way everlasting. Even when we don't know what to say or know what to do, he will always be there to lead us.